Hey friends, it's us again. Today, just a few minutes after we read chapter 8, we read 1 Corinthians chapter 9.
All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. I do want to see that mirror at some point, though.
Oh.
Okay. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9. What you have to remember is 1 Corinthians is really written as a response to a lot of questions that Paul was getting from the Corinthians. This is a chapter where he's answering some of their criticisms. So when Paul started preaching, he was on a missionary journey. He did about 3 of these in the Bible, and so he's traveling through Greece and he goes to Corinth. They are an affluent, a wealthy community. And so he's preaching there, and Paul does something pretty remarkable. He decides he's going to move to Corinth, and he stays there for about a year and a half. He moved to Corinth and he got a job. So he met with some friends, Aquila and Priscilla, and he moved into their shop where they made tents. Paul was a tent maker.
We were there.
We went there. So Paul did this because what he wanted to do, the Corinthians were so used to paying people in the temples, paying the priests. Paul wanted to set himself apart from that in a way where he says, I'm going to preach the gospel to you and I'm not going to charge you a dime. Now, he then takes 2 pathways that we need to understand. First of all, he says that pastors and preachers who do make their living in full-time ministry, that's absolutely fine. What he says was something like, he said, don't all the apostles get paid and have a family? He said we've chosen not to have families. We've chosen not to get paid, but it's not because that's wrong. It's because it would have been a hindrance as we came in, because you would have associated us with the other guys. Well, now they're criticizing. They're going, well, Paul, he doesn't do that. If he doesn't charge, he must not be worth it. Why? Because if it's more expensive, it's got to be better, right? Paul said, no, that's not what's going on. He said he's an apostle. He said the apostles, they receive their living from gospel work, from churches. But Paul had churches around the area who were financially supporting him so that he did not have to charge in Corinth to meet his needs. He also identifies the fact that he is an apostle. He said, because, they're going, well, Paul's not a real apostle. He wasn't one of the original 12. Paul said, first of all, I am an apostle. What is an apostle? An apostle was somebody who saw Jesus with their own eyes. And Paul saw Jesus in Acts chapter 9 on the Damascus Road. Then the apostle was sent. This is why we don't have apostles today. We still have disciples today. Every believer is a disciple. But only apostles existed in that first century. They saw Jesus with their own eyes and were commissioned for specific ministries. They died when they died, and they were over, okay? The next piece of this, though, is that what Paul says, he says that we have chosen to live this life in a way where we don't want anything to stand between us and reaching you. And money messes you up. So we were going to take money out of the equation. He said, I try wherever I go to find whatever the obstacle is and remove it so that I can share Jesus. I don't join people in their sin, but I don't play with obstacles. He said, I want to be available for everybody. At the end of the chapter, he uses sports metaphors. So in Corinth, they had their own Olympic style games. It was called the Isthmian Games. So just got tongue tied. So for a while, that was even bigger than the Olympics. So they understood boxing and wrestling and running. Why? Because those were the sports of the day. So Paul says that when you run, you better run to win. He said when you serve Jesus, when you evangelize, when you go on mission, you go to win souls, be faithful to Jesus. He's pushing ahead. And so he's giving his resume as an apostle. He said, and if I'm an apostle to anybody, it's you. Why? Because I led you to Jesus. So Paul is answering, what does it mean to be an apostle? What does it mean to be valuable? What does it mean? Where do we put our identity in the work of Jesus Christ? And so that's what Paul's doing in chapter 9. It sounds like he's just kind of fussing, but really he's discipling with strong conviction. That's what's going on.
Sounds good.
All right.
See y'all next time.
See ya.